The heat from the lava pulsed around them, the air vibrating with tension. Obi-Wan balanced himself on the highest ground when he shouted, "It's the end, Anakin! I'm on high ground." But contrary to what his master expected, Anakin did not jump. He was breathing heavily, his eyes inflamed with rage, but there was something else there, a flash of lucidity. He stepped back, turned off his lightsaber, and stared at Obi-Wan with a look full of conflict. Silence filled the battlefield until Anakin, still unable to let go of the rage boiling inside him, raised his arm and, using the Force, threw a glowing rock floating above the lava. Obi-Wan jumped to the side, dodging but remaining alert. Anakin took advantage of his master's movement and, with a second movement, threw another rock, this time directly into the river of lava. The impact caused a shower of magma to explode into the air, forcing Obi-Wan to move even further away from the edge to avoid being hit. Taking advantage of this moment of distraction, Anakin jumped with precision to the other side, landing firmly and activating his lightsaber again. Obi-Wan prepared himself, and the two faced each other once more. But now it was no longer a confrontation between master and apprentice. They were two tired warriors, destroyed by pain, war, and the decisions that had brought them there. The fight resumed intensely, but more slowly, marked by physical and emotional exhaustion. The heat of the lava seemed to merge with the burning of their internal pain. Blows, defenses, steps, and more missteps. The dance of blue light amid the red lava cut through everything around them. In a moment of hesitation, Obi-Wan faltered when he felt the impact of a loose stone, and Anakin took advantage. With a quick spin, he struck his master's side with his lightsaber, seriously wounding him in the back. Obi-Wan fell to his knees, gasping in pain, too weak to continue. Anakin raised his lightsaber. One last blow and it would be over, but he froze. Suddenly, something came to mind. Before his eyes was no longer an enemy, but the man who had taken him in, guided him, and protected him. Images exploded in his mind. Little Anakin, dirty and frightened on Coruscant, when Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan found him. The first missions, the words of comfort, the grueling training, the moments when they laughed together, when they called each other brothers. The memory of Obi-Wan's hand on his shoulder before the Battle of Geonosis. The nights they shared fear and hope. Anakin's eyes filled with tears. The anger began to dissipate like smoke in the wind. He lowered his lightsaber. He left the wounded master where he was and ran desperately back to Padmé. The platform where he had left Padmé looked like a field of ruins. Her body lay motionless, her dress soaked with dust and sweat. Anakin fell to his knees beside her, running his trembling hand over his wife's face. He called her name, murmuring it desperately. It was at that moment, on the other side of the system, that Chancellor Palpatine closed his eyes. His connection with Anakin was breaking. He felt his domination crumbling, like sand slipping through his fingers. He rushed his ship to Mustafar, but the link was no longer the same. Anakin did not answer him. The Chosen One was doubting. Knowing that time was short, Anakin took Padmé in his arms and ran toward the ship that had brought them there. The takeoff was quick and turbulent, but necessary. When Palpatine arrived, all he saw was the trail left by the thrusters. Obi-Wan, still wounded, sensed the presence of the Sith Lord and, using his last ounce of strength, dragged himself to a crack between the rocks. He hid and activated a small transmitter, calling for help from afar. He knew he couldn't face Palpatine in that state, but he also knew that Anakin's heart was not yet completely lost. Inside the ship, the silence was broken only by the sound of the engines. Padmé slowly opened her eyes. The first thing she heard was Anakin's voice, trembling but alive, calling her. "Padmé, you're safe now." She smiled slightly, but the smile faded when she looked at him. What she saw was not the husband she loved, but someone marked by pain and terrible decisions. She knew something had happened. The tenderness between them was real, but tinged with sadness. Anakin, his eyes moist, squeezed her hand and said, "I almost lost you. Forever." Padmé was silent for a moment, then asked in a weak voice, "What did you do, Anakin?" He hesitated, He didn't lie. He told her that he had helped Palpatine, that he had hunted Jedi, that he had fought Obi-Wan. He told her everything. The words hurt, and he spat them out as if they were ashes. He told her that the Jedi were being exterminated and that if she returned to Coruscant, she would be hunted down by the forces of the new Emperor. Padmé didn't answer. She just turned her face to the ship's window, letting a tear roll down her cheek. Anakin watched her in silence, feeling an abyss open up between them. With no destination in mind, Anakin decided to go to the only place he still knew as home, Tatooine, where it all began. Upon landing near the Lars property, he sought out Owen and Beru, explaining that Padmé needed care and a place to stay. Owen reluctantly agreed to help. Padmé was taken to one of the rooms, where Beru tried to make her comfortable. She remained silent, distant, protecting her already heavy belly with her hands. The birth was approaching, and even though she was hurt, she knew she had to hold on. Owen looked at Anakin suspiciously, but said nothing. In the days that followed, Anakin remained secluded, leaving only to check on the ship and make sure they were safe. There were no words between him and Padmé. She avoided his gaze, and he respected her silence. But at night, when everyone was asleep, he would walk to the dunes. He would sit under the stars and remain silent for hours. He began to have visions, images of what could have happened. He saw himself burned, breathing through a machine. He saw Padmé dead. He saw his children growing up without a father. These visions shook him deeply. Perhaps he thought there was still time to change fate. One morning, as the sun rose over the sand, Anakin watched Padmé from afar, sitting in the shade of the house. She looked tired. Her eyes were fixed on the horizon. He took a step forward, but stopped. He still didn't have the courage to speak to her. He still had no words, but something inside him was beginning to change. The anger that consumed him seemed distant now. The weight of guilt was suffocating. And there, in the silence of Tatooine, the Chosen One finally began to reconsider his path. There was no redemption yet, but there was regret, and perhaps that was the first step. The days on Tatooine dragged on like the shadows of the sunset over the dunes, but at least they were still safe, for Palpatine's empire was taking its first steps, and the Emperor no longer had his main pawn to conquer with ease. Anakin remained silent, dejected. The shame of what he had done gnawed at him, preventing him from even looking Padmé in the eye. She avoided him coldly, her silence more painful than any scream. In his mind, Anakin repeated, "If she would forgive me, if only she could forgive me." But he knew that words were no longer enough. Every time he tried to approach her, Padmé turned her face away. Between them now lay an abyss of fear, hurt, and wrong choices. In his loneliness, Anakin began to search for answers. He meditated among the rocks, unable to find peace, until one night, the desert breeze blew colder than usual. When he opened his eyes, a figure shrouded in light was watching him. It was Qui-Gon Jinn. The ghost of the Force appeared serenely, but there was pain in his countenance. "You are lost, Anakin," he said, "but the Force still whispers to you." Qui-Gon revealed forgotten messages from the past, teachings that spoke of the living Force, of the connections between all things, but above all of the need for redemption. Anakin, touched by those words, felt the spark that had made him the Chosen One reignite. Days later, while trying to track signals on the old Jedi communicator, Anakin discovered that Obi-Wan had survived. A wave of relief and anguish washed over him. Without the courage to face him in person, he recorded an encrypted message, asking for forgiveness. "I don't expect you to forgive me," the recording said, "but I needed you to know that I stopped and that I regret everything, Master." Then he disappeared from the Lars home without warning. He left only a note for Owen. He hid in the far reaches of the desert and took on the identity of a hermit, willing to face his mistakes in the only place where he could not hide from himself. Padmé felt his absence like an open wound. During treatment, her body reacted, but her heart remained restless. Approaching Beru and Owen, she tried to understand more about Anakin, who he had been before the war, before Coruscant. One afternoon, she heard Owen talk about Shmi, Anakin's mother, and how she had died at the hands of the Tuscans. Something changed in Padmé when she heard this again. She remembered how much Anakin had told her about the massacre. For the first time, she saw her husband in a new light, not just as the man who had fallen, but as the boy who never had time to be a child. And she understood that he was still fighting inside. Meanwhile, Anakin wandered through the desert, facing violent storms and visions that made him tremble. He saw flashes of the past. Himself as a child with chains on his feet. His mother smiling despite the pain. The rage that had consumed him when he saw her lifeless body. He also saw visions of the future. A galaxy in ruins, Jedi bodies scattered about, Palpatine on the throne. Each image brought him to his knees, covered in sand, trying to understand what he had become. He was no longer a knight of the Republic, but he was also no longer the monster of Mustafar. He was something in between, a lost man in search of redemption. One morning, the sound of human screams roused him from his stupor. As he approached, he saw a small community of settlers being attacked by Tusken hunters from a rival tribe. Anakin instinctively raised his lightsaber, but stopped. He remembered the massacre he had committed years earlier. He felt nauseous. He put away his lightsaber and ran using only the Force, disarming the Tuskens with precision, immobilizing them without killing them. He protected the villagers, but left soon after. He didn't want applause. He wanted silence. It was then that Qui-Gon Jinn reappeared. "You were brought here for a reason, Anakin. Not everything was by chance. That's what I wanted you to remember. That's why I asked you to go into the desert alone. Understand that you are the chosen one. You are not a villain." Qui-Gon's words echoed. Anakin realized that he was living the consequences of his own cycle of hatred. And for the first time, he understood that the path to forgiveness did not begin with words, but with actions. He sat down in the sand next to the old master, even if he was just an apparition of the Force, and cried. He cried like he hadn't since childhood. He said he was tired of running, of hurting, of trying to be the strongest. He just wanted to do the right thing. Qui-Gon simply said, "Then start now," and he disappeared with the wind. Determined to protect what he still loved, Anakin decided he would face everything alone. He put his robe back on, adjusted his lightsaber to his belt, and walked back toward the Lars property. But when he reached the top of a dune, he saw something that sent a chill down his spine. Hunter droids, walking in organized rows, searching the area. He knew what that meant. Palpatine had tracked him down, and they were too close to Padmé. Without thinking, he jumped in front of the column of droids. He used the Force to disarm them, to smash parts against rocks, and when surrounded, he activated his lightsaber. The fight was brutal. Each blow was like a release of pent-up anger, but guided by something new: discipline. He destroyed only the droids, never letting his anger control his movements. One by one, the hunters were taken down. Some tried to retreat, but he wouldn't let them. He used the power of the Force to close off the sand passage and faced them until the last one fell. The dust settled, and amid the wreckage, he stood, panting. He was no longer the blind warrior of Mustafar. He was a man defending those he loved. And he knew that this battle was only the beginning. Inside, Padmé, Owen, and Beru heard the sounds of the fight. The metallic crashes, the vibrations of the lightsaber, the echo of the Force. Worried, they went outside to see, shielding their eyes from the sand blown by the wind. What they saw left them motionless. Anakin, kneeling among the smoking wreckage, his lightsaber still lit, stuck in the ground. Padmé felt a tightness in her chest. For a moment, she saw again the man who had sworn to protect the galaxy. The wreckage was still smoldering when Anakin turned to Padmé with a look of regret. The fight was over for now, but the real war was still to come. He gently took her hands and, his voice breaking, asked, "Stay here, please. I can't be with you right now, but I swear I'll fix everything. I can't see our children being born with so much blood on their hands." Padmé, restrained, said nothing. She just nodded slightly. Anakin then looked at Owen and Beru, thanked them silently, and left for his ship. The sky of Tatooine was cut by his departure. Inside his ship, Anakin hurriedly adjusted the communication frequencies and let himself be pursued by Palpatine's droids to throw them off and keep Padmé safe. There was something he had to do before any battle. Find Obi-Wan. After hours of trying, a signal finally responded. The hologram flickered with the aged figure of his former master. Obi-Wan looked exhausted, his face hard. "Anakin," he said coldly, "you have the courage to come looking for me after all?" Anakin swallowed hard and replied humbly, "I am here for forgiveness, but I am also here because I need you. Palpatine must be stopped, and I know I cannot do it alone. You may never forgive me, and I can accept that, but I beg you to help me save Padmé." The tension hung heavy in the air. Obi-Wan listened intently, but his eyes betrayed his deep skepticism. Every word Anakin spoke was analyzed, every expression measured. "You expect me to trust you after what I saw on Mustafar?" he asked, pain in his voice. "I thought you were dead. Part of me wanted to believe it." Anakin lowered his head and said, "I died that day too, but the Force brought me back. Not for me, for her, for our son, for everything I destroyed. Help me, Master. When this is over, I'll surrender. I'll give you my life. But first, please, help me defeat him." The silence between them was long. Obi-Wan breathed heavily, as if each choice weighed like a rock on his shoulders. Finally, his voice hoarse, he said, "You say you've changed, that you're no longer the one who wielded the lightsaber against me. Perhaps I see traces of that. But I don't trust you, Anakin. Not yet." Anakin nodded. "I understand. I'm just asking for a chance. One last chance." Obi-Wan then turned away, closed his eyes for a few seconds, and immersed himself in the Force. When he opened them again, he said calmly, "There is a place where we may find the answers we need. Follow my ship. We are going to Dagobah." The two ships cut through the vastness of hyperspace. On board, Anakin remained silent. His hands gripped the controls tightly, his eyes fixed on the starry darkness ahead. Obi-Wan, meanwhile, meditated, but still kept his guard up. The two former battle brothers headed into the unknown, not only to find Yoda, but to confront their own ghosts. The galaxy was changing rapidly. Imperial troops were spreading across the outer systems, hunting down the remaining Jedi. And even among allies, hope seemed increasingly rare. Upon arriving at Dagobah, the planet's heavy, humid atmosphere immediately enveloped them. The ships nearly collided with giant roots and dense fog. Anakin found every detail strange. Huge insects, the thick, sticky air, the smell of decay and life. Obi-Wan, who already knew the planet, led the way. Together, they waded through the mud, sinking knee-deep, while hidden eyes watched them from among the leaves. Giant frogs leaped from ponds. Trees breathed like living creatures. It was as if the Force was pulsing through every inch of that forgotten world. As they made their way through the swamp, Anakin and Obi-Wan faced not only physical obstacles, but internal ones as well. Anakin had visions, glimpses of his own face melted by lava, of Padmé dead in his arms, of Luke and Leia growing up without a father. He trembled. Obi-Wan watched him closely, still uncertain. But something was different. The Anakin walking beside him was not the same one from Mustafar. There was humility in his movements, repentance in his eyes, and for the first time in a long time, the old master allowed himself to feel not just caution, but also a glimmer of hope. They climbed up a slope covered with spiraling roots. A huge tree stood ahead, its branches bending like arms in prayer. At the foot of the trunk, sitting in a meditative position, was Yoda. Small but imposing, the old master opened his eyes slowly. "You are late." His voice was deep and calm. Obi-Wan bowed respectfully. Anakin, on the other hand, knelt immediately, his face turned toward the ground. "Master Yoda," he whispered. The former Jedi leader did not respond right away. He just watched, as if he could see through Anakin's skin, straight into his soul. The silence between them was deeper than the swamp around them. Yoda walked in circles around Anakin, his staff creaking on the wet moss. Darkness carries you. Anger, fear, pain. But different now. More good, I see. Anakin did not move. He only whispered, I came to ask for forgiveness. I know I can't undo what I've done, but I'm ready to pay for everything. Yoda stopped in front of him and said, Pay you will, but first, act you must. Obi-Wan looked up and shared a brief glance with his former Padawan. For the first time, they stood side by side, as allies once again. For now, he allowed no further words from Anakin as he led them towards something else. On Tatooine, dawn was beginning to give way to the first rays of sunlight when Padmé went into labor. Owen and Beru supported her as best they could, transforming the modest interior of the Lars home into a makeshift center of hope. After hours of pain and anticipation, the first baby was born. Beru smiled when she heard the cry and handed her the boy wrapped in white cloths. Padmé, with tears in her eyes, whispered, Luke. Shortly after, the second child arrived. This time, Padmé held the girl with renewed affection and said, Reed. The name came out almost like a plea, but sadness lingered in her eyes. Anakin was not there to see his children born. As the twins opened their eyes to the light, Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Yoda prepared for the most difficult mission of their lives. Still in Dagobah, Anakin knelt before the old Green Master, his head bowed. Master Yoda, there is no excuse for what I have done. I have failed the Order, my brothers, the Force. Yoda, his eyes half closed, replied coldly, Fallen, the Jedi Order, because of you, thousands dead, children obliterated. You were chosen. You brought betrayal. The harshness of the words struck Anakin like sabers to his soul. He took a deep breath. I almost destroyed the woman I loved. I let myself be deceived. But now I understand. In the silence of the swamp, Anakin turned to Obi-Wan. I'm sorry. I was blind, confused, arrogant. And you were just trying to save me. Obi-Wan remained silent for a few seconds, but then nodded slowly. I wanted to hate you, Anakin, but today, I see that the man I knew still lives in you. With tears in his eyes, Anakin turned to Yoda. I don't want redemption. I want to help. After that, I will accept any punishment. The small master closed his eyes, listening to the whispers of the Force. When he reopened them, he said, We will train, then. A balance of the Force you will need. For days, the three prepared. The swamp became their training ground. Yoda guided them in deep meditation, testing their emotions and intentions. Anakin relearned to trust, to listen. Obi-Wan strengthened his focus, overcoming the pain of the past. Simulated combat, exercises with the Force, impulse control, everything was reinforced. In the end, they were not just Jedi. They were warriors shaped by error, loss, and purpose. When they left Dagobah, they were more united than ever, and each carried within them the certainty that they were ready to face the heart of darkness. With forged identities and infiltrated codes, they managed to enter the Empire's domain. The system was still consolidating, and although security was tight, it was not impenetrable. In disguise, they used their intelligence and connection to the Force to pass through armored sections, dodge sentry droids, and infiltrate Palpatine's main ship. Anakin felt the weight of the moment. The same place where he had once been exalted as an apprentice would now be the stage for his justice. When he reached the central room, he removed his hood and waited. Palpatine was alone. The Emperor slowly raised his eyes. A sinuous smile appeared when he saw him. Lord Vader, have you returned to me? Anakin activated his lightsaber and replied, No, I have returned to finish you. I am free of your voice, your shadow, your lies, and my name is Anakin Skywalker. Before the Emperor could react, Obi-Wan entered from the side, also with his lightsaber in hand. Palpatine rose slowly. Interesting. You believe this will end with the fall of one man. Then the main door was smashed open. Yoda appeared serenely, his staff in one hand, his lightsaber ready in the other. It will end, yes. The Emperor launched the first attack. Force bolts exploded from above, hitting walls and consoles. Anakin ran toward the throne, dodging nimbly. Obi-Wan placed himself between him and the attacks, defending with precision. Palpatine leaped with inhuman speed, spinning with his red lightsaber and laughing loudly. Yoda blocked the bolts, redirecting them with mastery. In a fierce sequence, Palpatine charged at Obi-Wan, who held his ground with difficulty. Anakin took advantage of an opening and attacked from below, forcing the Sith to retreat. The fight continued intensely. Palpatine grabbed Anakin with the Force and threw him against the wall, but Yoda jumped on him and the two dueled quickly high above the room, between pillars and platforms. Obi-Wan cut power cables to stop reinforcements. Palpatine returned to the floor, dueling Anakin in a brutal confrontation. Heavy blows, eyes fixed, breath labored. When Palpatine attempted a double lightning attack, Yoda appeared behind him and cut off his right arm with a quick movement. Palpatine screamed. Before he could react, Obi-Wan spun around, crossing to the other side with a precise cut and removing his left arm. Palpatine fell to his knees, still trying to summon the Force. But then Anakin approached, his eyes watering, and said, "This is what I've become." With one last blow, he thrust the saber into the Emperor's chest, splitting his body in two. The lights in the room flickered, and everything fell silent. The trap that had been set years ago was now broken. Palpatine would reign no longer, and the Jedi had won. Gasping for breath, the three remained silent. Obi-Wan turned off his lightsaber. Yoda leaned on his cane. Anakin fell to his knees, breathing heavily. "It's over?" he asked. "Yes," replied Obi-Wan. "But the price will be high." Anakin looked at the floor. "I want to see my family. Just that. Then, you can do what you think is right with me." Neither of them answered, but they knew that this man was no longer Vader. He was just Anakin Skywalker, the father who was trying to fix his destiny. Far away on the Lars farm, the twin suns of Tatooine began to set. Padmé cradled Luke in one arm while Leia slept on her lap. Beru approached tenderly and took Leia, placing her in the makeshift crib. Padmé looked up at the sky, as if sensing something changing in the galaxy. For the first time in a long time, she smiled. The darkness had receded, and even without knowing what the future would bring, there was hope. The flame of light was shining again, and she knew that Anakin would return.